It is Friday, June 8th, 2018, and this is Fox and Friends First, happening right now at 4 a.m. here on the East Coast.
And I have this warning for would-be leakers: don't do it.
Plugging the leaks, a high-profile indictment in the leaks probe just handed down to one of the Senate's most trusted secret keepers. We are live in Washington with the breaking developments.
It's about attitude. It's about willingness to get things done. But I think I've been preparing for the summit for a long time.
And it is all about attitude. Final preparations for the historic summit underway, but President Trump still has one stop to make before he heads to Singapore. And standing up to sour lemons, why little kids who are fined for setting up shop are now seeing the glass half full this morning. Fox and Friends First starts right now.
You've been hiding out lately, honey. You can't dress and flash until you spend a lot of money. Everybody's talking about the new sound, funny, but it's still rock and roll to me.
Good morning to you from New York City. A live shot for you this morning. Thank you for joining us. You made it. Let's just officially call it the weekend. I'm Heather Childers. Let's get straight to our top story because there is a lot happening this weekend. We begin with this breaking news. Has a leaker been found on Capitol Hill? The former director of security for the Senate Intel Committee now heading to court, charged with lying to the feds in the DOJ's massive crackdown over leaks. Griff Jenkins is live for us in Washington with more on the alleged leaker's possible ties to a New York Times reporter. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Heather. The FBI has arrested and indicted James A. Wolfe, a longtime former staffer for the powerful Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, whose job it was to safeguard the security of classified information. You cannot overstate the importance of that job. Accused of making false statements to the FBI last December during the leak investigation, some of which occurred as the committee was investigating Russian interference. Wolfe is charged with lying about contacts with three reporters, including through his use of encrypted messaging apps. The Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Byrne, Ranking Member Mark Warner, issuing a statement saying, "We are troubled to hear of the charges filed against a former member of the committee staff. While the charges do not appear to include anything related to the mishandling of classified information, the committee takes this matter extremely seriously, and they will be cooperating with the investigation." The New York Times, meanwhile, reporting that the DOJ seized email and phone records from their own reporter, Allie Watkins. The Times says the information seized predates her work at the paper, but the FBI approached Watkins about a previous 3-year romantic relationship with Wolfe as they were investigating unauthorized leaks. Reaction on Capitol Hill, as you can imagine, has been swift.
There have been a cascade of leaks, and nobody has been held accountable for any of those things. So I need more information about what exactly is happening here. I know that there's a former staffer on the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Now, this comes nearly a year after Attorney General Sessions issued this warning to leakers in Washington.
Who would illegally use their access to our most sensitive information to endanger our national security are, in fact, being investigated and will be prosecuted.
Wolfe is expected to make his first court appearance in the U.S. District Court later this morning. Heather, the U.S. Attorney Jesse Liu, who is working on that case, calling it a betrayal of the extraordinary trust put in him. We shall see. This story is going to develop. It is going to be a busy Friday.
Yeah, it sure is. And any other leakers out there will certainly be watching to see what happens with this. Thank you so much, Griff. Appreciate it. Another big story, the highly anticipated Inspector General's report into the Hillary Clinton email probe finally gets a release date. We've all been waiting for this. Michael Horowitz telling the Senate Judiciary Committee that it will be out on June 14th, which, by the way, is also President Trump's birthday. The report critiques how the FBI and the DOJ handled the investigation. Horowitz also agreeing to testify to the committee on June 18th, where he's expected to blast former FBI Director James Comey. A leak from that report paints Comey as a, quote, insubordinate and as a weak leader. But Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief of the Weekly Standard, says that this report could finally answer some questions about Comey's impact on the Clinton investigation.
On the question of why we're still talking about the Hillary Clinton investigation, I would argue that it's because there are still a lot of serious questions that we don't have answers to. A lot of them have to do with potential bias in the way that they approach the investigation. I would still like to know more about James Comey, even after he did weeks' worth of interviews, about why he used the language he did, about his conversations with Loretta Lynch. These are things that Michael Horowitz is going to have answers to in a way that I think nobody has gotten answers yet. I think it'll be important to have those answers so that we can move on.
Well, the Inspector General's review has already put top FBI official Andrew McCabe in legal jeopardy. You know that, sending a criminal referral to the U.S. attorney, and that was back in April. And the anticipation is growing as final preparations are now underway for the historic summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. But first, the president is heading to the G7 summit today. That's where tensions are at an all-time high with world leaders. Jackie Ibanez joins us now with all of those details. Good morning, Jackie.
Hi, good morning, Heather. A lot happening in the next couple of days. Only 4 days remain until the much-anticipated face-to-face meetings with President Trump and Kim Jong-un, the commander-in-chief, brushing off recent criticism, saying he's fully prepared ahead of the historic talks while meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan.
I think I'm very well prepared. I don't think I have to prepare very much. It's about attitude. It's about willingness to get things done.
The latest Fox News poll showing 66% of Americans think that President Trump should meet with the rogue regime's leader. 24% say he shouldn't. President Trump says if all goes well, he's even open to hosting him on U.S. soil.
Yes to the second part, certainly if it goes well. And I think it would be well received. I think he would look at it very favorably, so I think that could happen.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who has met with Kim Jong-un twice now ahead of the summit, says the leader is coming to terms on denuclearization.
Has there been progress in bringing that definition closer together?
Yes.
Can you describe that a little bit?
No.
Before meeting with Kim, the president heads to the G7 summit in Canada, where tensions are expected to be very high there. It will be the first face-to-face with world leaders after hitting the EU, Canada, and Mexico with massive steel and aluminum tariffs. President Trump will head to G7 this morning. He's expected to leave early and will depart for Singapore tomorrow morning. Heather?
All right, we're going to talk much more about this and some of the details that we expect to come out of both of those meetings coming up. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Well, Fox News alert for you. The U.S. Embassy in China sending out a second alert in 2 days about a mysterious health issue affecting Americans. The State Department evacuating more diplomats suffering from dizziness, visual problems, and hearing loss. China is vowing to get to the bottom of the cause. You may remember that these symptoms, they do sound eerily similar to those that impacted 24 U.S. diplomats in Cuba following so-called sonic attacks. They reported some strange noises and showed symptoms consistent with brain injuries, so the investigation continues. Well, President Trump says pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal is already paying off and curbing the country's bad behavior. Listen.
I think Iran already is not the same country. If you look, I don't think they're looking so much to the Mediterranean like they were 2 months ago. So it's a big difference. It was number one nuclear, but also out of it, you also get the side benefit that Iran is a different place.
Well, the president predicts that his tactics with Iran will set the tone for nuclear negotiations with North Korea at next week's historic summit in Singapore. And to the immigration debate for you now, stalling out on Capitol Hill again. House Republicans spending hours in a closed-door meeting trying to work out their differences on protecting illegal immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. Well, House Speaker Paul Ryan says while no deal was reached, he says lawmakers have come to a consensus on DACA. This as moderate Republicans push to pass their own immigration bill, falling a few signatures short of forcing a vote in the chamber. And the White House is launching a new attack on the opioid epidemic. The Trump administration releasing some new ads detailing the dangers of prescription drugs.
I tried Oxy at a couple of parties. I thought I had it under control. I didn't know it'd be this addictive.
Well, the ad is one of 4 released on TV and social media detailing true stories of young people harming themselves to get drugs. Well, President Trump declared the opioid crisis a public health emergency. You'll remember that. That happened back in October. Washington, D.C. becoming the District of Champions overnight. The Washington Capitals hoisting the Stanley Cup for the first time in team history after an epic comeback.
It's fed back over. Connolly saved. Score!
Lars Eller's go-ahead goal, taking the Caps to a 4-3 victory over the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Now, one player already says that he will not be celebrating at the White House, though. It's already started. Devontae Smith-Pelly telling Canada's National Post before their Stanley Cup win that he would not attend because he doesn't agree with the president's rhetoric. And so it continues. But what about this? Final preparations are underway in the Belmont Stakes, where Justify hopes to take the Triple Crown. The 3-year-old arriving at the track after winning the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. 9 horses entering the starting gates tomorrow for the 150th running of the Belmont. Justify's trainer Bob Baffert led American Pharoah to Triple Crown victory in 2015, the first in 37 years. Well, the time now is about 11 minutes after the top of the hour, and demanding answers. Tens of thousands of veterans sick from burn pit exposure. So what is being done about it? What exactly is it? Well, the lawmakers holding the VA accountable. And Singapore summit just days away. The final touches for the historic sit down, I should say, with Kim Jong-un. President Trump says it's all about attitude, not preparation. Rebecca Heinrichs is live for us up next, and why she says President Trump is more than ready for the meeting. And he took a knee for the anthem and couldn't get a job, and now he's blaming President Trump. Colin Kaepernick's newest plan to take our commander-in-chief to court. Well, President Trump moving full steam ahead towards Singapore with just days until the historic summit. Our commander-in-chief says it's all about attitude, not preparation. So what kind of attitude does he need for a meeting with an unpredictable dictator like Kim Jong-un? National security analyst and Hudson Institute senior fellow Rebecca Heinrichs joins us now with her insights. Thank you so much for joining us. Certainly appreciate it this morning.
Good morning, Heather.
So that is a big question. How do you prepare for a meeting with Kim Jong-un? And when the president says it's all about attitude, what type of attitude do you need?
Well, you need to project confidence, and that's what the president is doing. When he says it's all about attitude, he's projecting confidence, which is what he should do going into this. Secretary of State Pompeo had a wonderful press conference after the president had this press conference with the Japanese Prime Minister Abe, in which Pompeo said and reiterated and affirmed that President Trump has been having hours of briefings. And so President Trump is very well prepared. He knows all the information. He understands what the North Koreans are going to try to do here, and he knows what he's looking for. So at this point, he needs to go and project confidence, be prepared to walk out if the North Koreans decide that they're not going to play fair or they're not going to actually try to negotiate in earnest. And so I'm pretty confident going into this weekend, going into the next week, to see what President Trump can try to get done.
Yeah, he has also talked about a willingness to get things done. But do you think on their part, Kim Jong-un is willing to get things done? Have you seen any signs of that aside from agreeing to this meeting?
I remain completely skeptical of the North Koreans. I think that Kim Jong-un would like to, he's looking for things to secure for his own country. I don't think the North Koreans are really interested in getting rid of their nuclear weapons. But because President Trump is such an unconventional president, and because he's so committed to results and he's not ideological, things like this, complimenting Kim Jong-un and really sort of extending this diplomatic overtures to him that I haven't seen from an American president. I don't know. Maybe he can pull something off and really give Kim Jong-un something that would really persuade him that it would be worth the cost.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this all along. I think that Kim Jong-un actually looks up to President Trump. I really do. I think that he respects his unconventional style. So we'll see if that benefits us in these negotiations moving forward. But in the meantime, President headed first to the G7 summit with tariff talks. What can we expect as the president heads to Canada today?
Well, you know, I think President Trump, the tweets that he sent out yesterday where he was really giving Macron a hard time and Justin Trudeau a hard time, I think President Trump, this is something that he does. He's not afraid to really mix it up. I'm not a big supporter of putting these tariffs on our closest allies, but I'm also not an economist, so I don't have a really super strong opinion about this, because I think there's others who know more about it. But what I do appreciate is that President Trump doesn't see these issues that he can't touch, or that he can't say that, or he can't do that. He's willing to mix it up, and I think that these alliances are strong, and so I think in the end you're going to see these alliances that are going to weather this storm. They're going to cooperate and play ball with President Trump, and we're going to have stronger alliances by the end of his first term if he does have a second.
Right, yeah. I think he definitely doesn't tend toward politically correct speech. You know,
No, he does not.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the tweets that you were just mentioning that he talked about yesterday. One about the unfair trade. We can pull that up, and what you were mentioning is, you know, he talks about how we need to fix that and how it would benefit us. Basically, you can see it right there.
Yeah, you know, and I appreciate the fact that, I mean, I kind of chuckle when I see these tweets. I know a lot of people get really upset and they get really worked up and they think that these alliances are going to be ruined over it. And I think that that's nonsense. President Trump, these alliances are strong, and so he's allowed to. And I think that there's space there to push back and say, no, these alliances are strong, and I want a better trade deal for Americans because I'm here to represent them. I'm not here to represent you. And so I think the American people can really appreciate that.
And the thing is, he's also forcing some action on the part of everyone when he puts tweets out like this and lets people know, you know, what's actually going on behind closed doors. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We appreciate your insight. We'll bring you back next week for reaction, for sure.
Thanks.
Thanks. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour, almost. And Alex Johnson speaking out to Fox News, thanking God and President Trump for her newfound freedom.
The day that I got the news that President Trump had granted my clemency and given me a second chance in life was the best day of my life.
Carly Shimkus is here live up next with the reaction that is pouring in online. Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. The mother of drunk driving affluenza teen ruled too rich to know right from wrong is back in jail. Tanya Couch testing positive for methamphetamine just 2 weeks after failing another drug test. The results violating her bond conditions after she ran away to Mexico with her son Ethan in 2015. Ethan spent just 2 days behind bars for killing 4 people in a 2013 DWI crash. And Casey Anthony's former lawyer is going to prison. Todd Macaluso will spend the next 15 years behind bars for agreeing to fly more than 3,000 pounds of cocaine on his private jet. Well, the plan was to fly the drugs from Ecuador to Honduras for 200 grand. The cocaine would then make its way to the U.S. Macaluso was Anthony's lawyer for a year before she was acquitted of murdering her 2-year-old daughter in 2011. Well, newly freed Alice Johnson crediting her faith in God for how she kept hope alive throughout her time in prison.
The only way that I was able to make it through that time, and this is the truth, was my faith in God. I knew that one day he was going to bring me out. And the day that I got the news that President Trump had granted my clemency and given me a second chance in life was the best day of my life.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115 is here with the reaction to this uplifting story, and there has been a lot of reaction.
There
online.
sure has, and she relied on God so much she actually became an ordained minister in prison. And you know, Kim Kardashian West, who worked on Johnson's behalf for the better part of a year, is also speaking out, saying she landed that White House meeting through Ivanka Trump. Take a listen.
Trump is the last person I thought that would have done this, but he did, and he pulled through. He was compassionate. He was sympathetic to her. He knew that this is the right thing to do.
Julie on Twitter says, beautiful. Congratulations, Miss Alice. Alice, I know God has big things in store for you. Jane tweets, so happy for Miss Johnson. I hope she jumps on board to help others gain their release. And another Twitter user, Nikita, says, this is a great story with a good message, no matter what your party affiliation. I think that is so true.
Yes.
This is receiving bipartisan support, which is very rare.
All those athletes need to take a cue from Kim Kardashian, meet with the president, even though you disagree with him, and see if you can move things forward, including people like Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, speaking of that, that's right. Well, Colin Kaepernick, he's taking his collusion case against the NFL straight to the top. His legal team is reportedly interested in seeking subpoenas for President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence. Now, they are interested in the president's connection with NFL team owners, wondering if he had anything to do with their decision not to hire Colin Kaepernick. This is receiving so much attention online. Dahlia says, what a joke. Our leaders have serious business on their plates and have no time for a whining loser. Neither do the American people. Lynn says, another prime example of the blame game. Could it be that you were a subpar quarterback? So, wow, a lot of strong feelings on this. A very aggressive move by Colin Kaepernick's legal team.
Right. I wonder if he has any idea what else is going on in the world other than him and his own issues. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, so this lemonade stand, we were just talking about this, and I would be so embarrassed if I was someone that had to actually do this to little kids.
Right, so there is this kind of growing trend of police officers fining little kids for operating lemonade stands. Operating, like it's so
crazy.
serious. Operating lemonade stands without a permit. Well, Country Time Lemonade is stepping in. Take a look at this tweet they sent out saying, kids across the country are getting busted for operating lemonade stands without a permit. We're taking the lead to hashtag save lemonade stands by paying for kids' fines and permits this year. For every retweet this gets, we'll donate $1 to $500,000 to help kids next year and beyond. Well, that has received 51.4 thousand retweets last time I checked. So keep that going. Keep that retweeting. I can't believe this is happening.
Right, yeah.
But it's cute that Country Time is stepping in.
What kind of world are we living in?
I know. Like it's some big mafia operation. A little kid.
It's the kids mafia. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Well, the time now is about half past the top of the hour, almost, and a brand new warning just sent to Congress. Terrorists taking to the skies more than ever before. So how do we protect the American people? Our next guest, a counterterrorism expert, is here with a frightening reality check. Aaron Cohen is up next. And bad news for all you coffee addicts out there.
Dude, I'd be a mess if I had to give up my Joe. I have a full-blown addiction. Hopefully that won't come back to haunt me.
How your caffeine craving is about to cost you a little bit more. Welcome back. President Trump heading to the G7 summit today, where tensions should be high. It will be the first face-to-face with world leaders after hitting the EU, Canada, and Mexico with massive steel and aluminum tariffs. This as final preparations are underway for next week's Singapore summit with Kim Jong-un. President Trump touting his preparedness.
I think I'm very well prepared. I don't think I have to prepare very much. It's about attitude. It's about willingness to get things done.
Well, President Trump is expected to leave the G7 in Canada early and will depart for Singapore tomorrow morning. The feds putting the violent MS-13 gang on notice. Agents indicting some 24 members on racketeering charges. Now, all of this is connected to a series of murders and other violent crimes on Long Island, New York. That area has been a hotbed for the gang, now blamed for 15 vicious murders over the last 2 years. And lawmakers now making sure that tens of thousands of our nation's heroes recover from a dangerous disposal method. Members of Congress holding a hearing demanding answers from the VA on what is being done to help those exposed to burn pits. Burn pits were used in Iraq and Afghanistan as a temporary way to get rid of garbage, including batteries, plastic, and medicine. And some of those veterans say that their health is failing after the exposure. The VA says it's still researching the effects. Well, the Trump administration will not defend Obamacare in a lawsuit brought by 20 Republican-led states. The suit filed in February argues that because the newly passed tax law eliminates penalties for going uninsured, the individual mandate is no longer constitutional. In a letter to Speaker Paul Ryan, Attorney General Jeff Sessions notes that the DOJ rarely fights an existing law in court. All right, big story. Plugging the leaks. Former Senate aide James Wolf facing the music today after being indicted, accused of lying to federal investigators as the FBI continues its probe into classified information being leaked to reporters. Here now to react is national security expert, Aaron Cohen. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Good morning, Heather.
So what are your initial thoughts on this leak and what's being done?
And my initial thoughts are a spaghetti strainer and just all the water that comes out of it when you're drying off the noodles. I mean, why not dismantle the CIA? Why not tear apart the NSA, which is 8 times the size of the CIA? How can that former head of the head of the Senate Intel Committee, this guy Wolf, and I understand this has been going on for a year, this investigation, be responsible for such heavy decisions which affect our national security, which is essentially what this Senate Intelligence Committee does. They're the ones who make all of the major paramilitary decisions, all of the major intel operations, all of what's called, Heather, the small unit operations, the unconventional warfare, the drone strikes, the targeted strikes that we take overseas. And the fact that this guy is building the career of journalists on the back of his personal means, that's absolutely mind-blowing. And so I love the fact that President Trump is he's literally wrapping this strainer in steel, and so good for him.
Yeah, and you also say that it's also an indication of just how murky the U.S. The swamp has gotten.
Yeah, it's almost beyond murky. Even a great white shark wouldn't be able to see his way through the bottom of that murk prior to the president coming in here and cleaning this mess up. This is our national security. I can't think of a bigger issue that we've been facing in the last 15, 16, 17 years since 9/11. And the fact that the thing is, President Trump just doesn't care when it comes to this stuff. He just goes and he crushes. He mobilizes his impulses and doesn't react on emotion and just goes, hey, we got to get it fixed. And when it comes to security, that's how it has to be. And so, good for him. And I hope this fleshing out continues to lead as far as our intel goes, because again, there's a national security final outcome here which could affect our safety. So
right. I was going to ask you actually that if you think there's more to come, but obviously you do. Let's move on to this next topic, though. You mentioned drones, terrorists plotting their next terror attack using drones. How do we thwart an attack like this and protect the American people?
Well, thwarting any type of terror attack begins with giving our laws enough teeth to be able to A, enforce them, and then B, prosecute them. So what we need to do is give the federal authorities the ability to be able to have laws on the books for them to begin counterterror operations. This probably went from, a dozen unauthorized drones flying around sensitive installations to, 1,500, 2,000, somewhere in there. And so obviously terrorists see drones as useful as we do in the military. We use them because they're cheap. You can deploy them in forward operating areas, and they're not powered by men and women, and therefore, they're very safe and they're very effective. But it's just as easy to strap an IED on one of these things and fly it over a nuclear facility or a school, for that matter. So got to create laws and get them on the books.
So you were talking about the numbers. We have them up right there just so people can see for themselves. 8